and I'm like, no, like a show, like a bodybuilding or something. And so you stand on stage in your underwear or something. And I'm just like, yeah, I mean, posing. Yeah. You know, I think there's a lot of misconceptions. I think there's a lot of people that just don't get it. They don't understand what it is.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's an underground type of sport. It's a niche sport. It's not. It's in certain aspects of the sport are growing in popularity, and certain aspects are shrinking.
Sure.
I mean, competitive like bodybuilding, I guess, when done at a fairly high level, or even it could be a lower level, but somebody who's really trying to be competitive, it's more of a, like I think I mentioned to you earlier today, it's more of a spiritual type journey. It's not so much a physical.
Right.
And people that just look at bodybuilding as a, kind of a look at me sport, and trust me, there's a lot of people in there that it is a very you got to be a very selfish person and self-centered in most cases to do well in the sport. But for most really good competitors, there's more to it than just lifting weights and getting on a stage. I mean, it's a whole. You're trying to control your emotions, your thoughts, everything for weeks and months on end, in order to achieve a goal of looking the best as you can. And yeah, it's not an easy thing to do. And,
right.
And most competitors don't ever usually go as far as they could. Even people who are doing the shows, you can usually tell when you compete, and I've competed, more than once.
Right.
Not a professional or anything like that, but at a fairly high level. And most competitors are confused as to what they're supposed to be doing.
Sure.
And most competitors they're not 100% involved in the process. They leave a little bit in the gas tank, so to speak. And very few people are just locked into and willing to do whatever it takes to basically win one of these contests.
Right. Right.
I mean, it's a tough. They're tough.
And that's and to kind of explain, the kind of what you're saying is that the anybody that's ever even been on a diet and has felt the cravings or the hunger pains or had to get up and work when you're tired or people that have been athletes that have been injured and gone out on the field and still practiced or played and things like that. I mean, you're kind of going through that, but every day when you're getting ready for a show, at least the latter segments.
It's a battle of wills, of your own will.
Yeah.
It's a battle of, these competitions aren't won and lost on the day of these shows. They're won and lost months and years leading up to these shows.
Yeah, it's
and
the
nobody really takes that into account. I mean, the thing that separates really good competitors, obviously they have certain physical characteristics, which we could talk about hours upon hours on that, but really it's a mindset of these competitors.
Sure.
It really is, and people just have a hard time understanding, well, how do you pick first from second and third? Well, the reason is whoever probably won that show, and in a lot of cases, assuming they're at a similar development,
sure,
and not putting a pro up against an amateur, so to speak, but a similar level. Usually, it's the people who just have less distractions and who can really focus in for literally months,
right?
Not days or hours, months at a time, and not give in to physical cravings and wanting to sleep and not wanting to train and not wanting to pose on practice you're posing and all these things. And it's a mental thing. It's a mental game. It's not a physical game.
Right, and that's I think something that people fail to realize is that it's thousands, hundreds of thousands of repetitions, hundreds of days where you're already tired but you force yourself to train. You're not hungry, but you force yourself to eat.
And it is, but see, there's another layer there of knowing when to pull back.
Sure, yeah.
And when to keep the pedal to the metal, like we kind of talked earlier. Mm-hmm. And learning how to do that is, like, again, an art form. That's not just... It's a complicated subject of learning how to get ready for one of these... when I say ready, I mean somebody actually shows up and is like, wow, that guy's going to win this show.
In shape, yeah, right.
This guy's not messing around.
Sure.
Versus just, you look good at the beach and everybody in the gym thinks you're going to do well because they don't know.
Yeah.
The real world of bodybuilding is what I've seen in the last few years is it's changed due to social media, and there's a lot more divisions for physique competitors and classic competitors and bikini and all these kind of things. And that's all fantastic because it gets more people involved in the sport. There's a lot of great competitors, but it's being promoted. Just there's so much look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook. They're not even focused on their training anymore. They're focused on getting their pictures up so they can increase their likes on their webpage or their Facebook page, and it's look at the food I'm eating and all these kind of things. And it's really it's kind of pathetic. It's like nobody really cares.
The process is lost.
I'm kind of fed up with bodybuilding, to be honest. I'm like, again, the real, and I'm not putting this on everybody that's in the industry.
Right.
I'm just saying the vibe of the industry is just like, who cares?
Right.
I mean, we want to know about the people who are, I'm telling you right now, the people that usually aren't on social media and the people who you have no idea what they're doing and why they're doing it, those are the people winning these contests.
Yeah.
Because they're not concerned about, most people when they're putting their pictures out there weeks and weeks and weeks leading up to a contest, not everybody, because there's certain people who, but a lot of these competitors, it's they're doing it because they know they don't have a chance to win the show. They're trying to get self-recognition before the show.
Right.
It used to be back before social media, you had to win the show.
Right.
And then you got the recognition from your family and your friends and in the industry, as far as magazines and promoters and other competitors. That's how you got recognition, because you actually put in the work and won the show, or placed high consistently, or that you let your work speak for itself, so to speak.
Right.
Versus, hey, look what I'm doing. Meal prep Sunday. Look what I've got going here.
Sure.
Who cares?
Yeah. Well, and
that's my. I just don't care about it anymore.
I think it's building a brand, and when you're actively building a brand, I think it's probably hard to also focus 100% on what you're actually doing, and that's trying to prepare yourself to get in to win a show, or to compete, or whatever your goal is. So when
that probably makes no sense to anybody who's listening, but I'm telling you, this is it's true.
Yeah. So let's fast forward. So we've done the work. We're on stage now. What are the judges looking at in terms of why is that guy beating that guy?
If you're in a class, when I say classic bodybuilding, there is a division now called classic bodybuilding, I guess. But I'm talking about just traditional, what it's been since day one. What they're looking for is balance in the physique. In other words, is a muscular development balance from top to bottom? Are your legs too overpowering for your upper body? Do you have great upper body as far as chest and arms or something, but no back? Mm-hmm. All these kind of things they're looking at. Who's complete? Who's got the lowest body fat is a huge factor in today's contests. Most guys aren't in shape, and so you have guys that probably wouldn't be necessarily winning a show based on bone structure or muscle size. They're losing these shows to people who maybe aren't as good at bodybuilders, but they're just in better shape.
Yeah.
I mean, that happens a lot on the amateur and the pro level.
Right.
It happens all the time. I mean, they say, who's in shape?
Yeah. So we're looking
for very, very, very low body fat, really dry, almost looks like an anatomy chart. I mean,
sure.
They're looking for presentation, posing, but it's a combination. It's who has the least weaknesses, who has everything in balance the most, who brings the best combination of 3 or 4, muscle size, symmetry, shape, condition. It's who's the best combination of those judging criteria. Right. It's not necessarily the biggest person. Everybody thinks it's the biggest guy who wins a bodybuilding show who's a casual observer. It's not. It usually never is. I used to tell people when I would go to a competition early on, early shows when I was first getting into the sport, you'd always see the particular competitors who would come in at the weigh-ins, right? Mm-hmm. And they would have their tank tops on, and they'd look bigger than everybody. You just see their tank top, and they just look monstrous. 230, 40-pound person that's 6 foot tall or under.
Yeah. And
still very, very lean. And then you'd think, oh, that guy's going to win this show. And I mean, no doubt, look at that person. And then they'd get on stage, and they just look terrible.
Yeah, you see them next to the other competitors.
Then you'd see these guys off in the corner at the weigh-ins who are all covered up, didn't really look particularly impressive. Half of them didn't even look like they hardly even worked out. Like, seriously.
Sure.
And then they would strip down backstage, and you're like, oh, my gosh, what is going on?
Yeah.
and that guy would win.
Right.
And it took me about 5 shows in a row of going and kind of, but nobody in the audience that's watching, even the people, their training partners wouldn't have any idea about this. So I'm saying the competitors themselves don't usually know what to look for.
Sure. Well, and I think
unless they're very experienced, then they know. Okay.
Right. And I think that a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's also a subjective sport. I mean, it's based on judging. So some shows or some groups of judges might have different preferences too. So
they can.
But generally, if you've done the work, if you've done the prep, and your body is flowing properly, so to speak, if the body parts look like as if they fit together properly, that person should technically win every time.
Assuming somebody's not better.
Well, yeah,
with
sure.
The same criteria.
Right.
They should, and what I found. Again, that's where I think there's a disconnect. But people think, oh, these bodybuilders are meatheads, and they just come in, and most of them are, because they're not really bodybuilders.
Sure,
they're not. I mean, it's kind of like I compare it to, everybody thinks there's an MMA fighter,
right?
Because they go to MMA twice a week, and they go out to the bar on Saturday night, and they have to pick a fight with somebody to prove the point that they're this fantastic, don't mess with me kind of a. In reality, a real MMA fighter, you're probably, other than you can tell because they kind of look like they've been beat up a lot, but I mean, they don't have an arrogance about them a lot of times. They don't have,
sure,
you know what I'm saying?
Humble people that just go into the gym,
know
they
already
do their job,
that
and
they
go
are
home.
a much better fighter than the guy that shows up because they've been fighting for 15 years, and they know. It's the same in bodybuilding. The true bodybuilders are completely different. The sport is completely different at the base level of it than the outside world has any idea. It's nothing to do with what it kind of looks like from the outside. I mean, it's totally different.
Well, and
for good reasons and for bad.
Sure.
I mean, there's positive and negatives. The world has a really messed up viewpoint.
Right.
And the social media stuff is not helping their image.
No.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
They didn't have a great image in the 80s and the 90s. It was better in the 80s and the 70s. It got worse in the 90s and worse in the 2000s, and it's worse today.
Right.
And a lot of it is due to social media.
Right. Well, one of the big things that I tell people to do when I start working with them for one reason or another, or I guess in one capacity or another, is do your homework. I know that it's a big thing now to have coaches. Everybody has coaches. A lot of the pros even have coaches nowadays, and if you put that person out on their own, they may not know anything. They're a product of who's coaching them, and I think that's a big mistake. I think you need to know the science. You need to know your body. You need to know these things yourself. When I first started, I think I picked up my first weight in like 1991 or 2. Didn't do much with it, but it was about then when I started getting into the whole weightlifting stuff for sports, and I started reading Muscle Mag and Flex and Iron Man, and later on Muscle Media and Muscular Development and things. But anyways, point is that I read everything I could get my hands on. I learned about, I was a 18 years old person knowing more about physiology and anatomy and things than a lot of the trainers at that point, and even a lot of the people that I started to go into school with for kinesiology and things, So, but I taught myself how the body works. I taught myself how to do these things, how to train, how to lift, how to eat, and I did all that stuff because I wanted to know. I didn't want to rely on somebody. I figured, and I think that's a big thing. That's a big difference now compared to then. Is people don't desire to know. People just say, "I'll go go through the motions, and then when I need a coach, I'll get a coach."
Well, I mean, I pretty much agree with that. I've seen examples of both, though. I've seen examples of competitors where they do everything on their own, and most of them don't do that well.
Sure.
They may to a point, and then I've seen competitors who do everything on their own and they do extremely well.
Right.
So, I mean, there's going to be cases but I would say, you're always better off knowing more than less.
Right.
And you have to know your own individual body. But, I mean, 2 examples right off of both viewpoints. Dorian Yates never had a trainer, never had a coach, never had anything. Never had a dietitian. Dominated competition in the 90s, probably worse than anybody or better than anybody's ever beat people.
6-time Mr. Olympia.
But I mean, his level of condition and all these kind of things was superior to probably any Mr. Olympia winner before or since.
Sure.
And he did that without a coach.
Right.
Well, Ronnie Coleman, the guy who won the Olympia after Dorian retired, was getting beat all the time until he hired a coach.
Well, yeah.
And then he took him to the next level because he needed some more information, some knowledge that he just did not have access to.
Sure.
Dorian, though, was a little more intellectual, I